So I will go ahead and turn it over to Heather.
Thank you, Lauren. Good afternoon. My name is Heather Peralta. I will be your presenter for today. A little about myself. Professionally, I have been supporting folks who have developmental disabilities for 24 years. I have worked for Gompers for over 20 years now and have been the staff guidance trainer for almost 17 years. For those of you that have not heard of Gompers, we are a facility that's committed to serving adults who have developmental disabilities. We currently have two DTA programs, which is day training for adults, where we teach habilitation goals like life skills, social skills, independence, community involvement, things like that. Gompers also offers job training and employment placement. Right now, we serve about 250 individuals who have developmental and intellectual disabilities. I'm also a lead Article 9 and prevention and support instructor for the state of Arizona. Article 9, what that is a prerequisite of the state of Arizona for anyone who will be providing services for individuals through the Division of Developmental Disabilities. It basically just deals with managing inappropriate behaviors without violating the rights of the individuals that we support. And then prevention and support. This is a training that teaches staff that work under the DDD on how to recognize when a challenging behavior may occur and how to utilize least restrictive options and to use de-escalation strategies. We also talk about, what a behavioral emergency is and what emergency physical intervention techniques are approved in the instance that least restrictive methods are just not working. The main focus of that training, though, is teaching positive replacement behaviors to get a need met. I do want to thank you all for being here this afternoon, joining me today to share some tips on preventing and de-escalation of inappropriate or even dangerous behaviors in the vehicle. So we can go ahead and get started. If we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, for the learning objectives. One more, I think. Perfect. So human emotion in times of extreme stress, it can seem unpredictable. Having to operate a vehicle while managing conflict honestly only makes things harder. So today's workshop is going to focus on how to proactively assist individuals who have developmental disabilities and challenging behaviors before they are nearing or in a behavioral emergency. We're also going to define what behavior truly is and how to determine why behaviors occur. So that's like the function of behavior. We will also discuss how to identify the sequence of behavior, which is the APBCCs, which is antecedent, precursor, behavior, calm down, and consequence. And we will discuss tips on how personal space, body language, and listening skills can help effectively de-escalate the disruptive behavior of those in your care. So today's class will give you the basic tools to prevent behavioral emergencies. Throughout this workshop, we're going to be practicing with specific tools that you may have available for you as a driver, including ways to build relationships and proactively support someone who may display a challenging behavior. So we're going to go ahead and get started with building positive relationships with the people that we transport. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right. So building positive relationships. I mean, how you look and handle yourself when you are talking to a passenger in combination with your tone of voice and choice of words can make a critical difference in trying to calm an angry or upset passenger. So first, we're going to start from the very beginning with relationship builders. When we first meet a new person in any area of our lives, we do a lot of different things to build positive relationships. So I want to talk about some of the things that we can do to build a positive relationship with the individuals that you will be transporting. So the first one on the list, I believe, is on the next slide. Yeah, first good impression. Studies show that the first impressions are formed within the first seconds of any interaction. The first impression is communicated to your passengers based on your appearance, your body language, your demeanor, and your mannerisms. A smile first thing in the morning or as they're getting on the van in the afternoon, it goes a long way paired with a warm greeting. So let's talk about that. Okay, some of you in this training today, you may have been transporting the same person for a while now and have had the opportunity to gain some information about them. However, some of you will be picking up different passengers every day. So greeting passengers with a warm and confident smile can put both you and the passengers at ease. So you want to say hello. It's good to see you this morning. How are you doing? If you know the individual's name, you may add a personal touch in that greeting, saying, "Good morning, Mr. Peterson. It's good to see you." If meeting the person for the first time, introduce yourself. You may ask them their name. You may even ask them too if they have any nicknames that they prefer. For example, if you're going to be transporting Robert, they may prefer to be called Bob. Make sure that you take a note of that so the next time that you see them, you take the care and you listen, so now you know what name they preferred to be called. I think remembering details is just such a good way to build positive relationships with a person. Next slide, please. Set that real quick. Yeah, I think I want to yeah, there we go. So the next one on our list here is eye contact. Eye contact is the most fundamental way to create a connection with the person. Eye contact is a form of body language. It's also very important, during communication. When you keep eye contact with the person that you're talking to, it indicates that you're focused and paying attention. It means that you're listening to what the person has to say. Making eye contact with the passenger may also assist you and help you to be inclined to someone that may be disruptive. And it's a way to let your passengers also know that you're watching what's going on within the transit vehicle. It is important to note, though, that avoidance of eye contact may be a characteristic behavior of a person who maybe has ADHD, or if they are on the autism spectrum, they may look as if they're ignoring you, but some people do find making eye contact very difficult. It's just another good example as why it's so important to get to know the individual. Okay. Next up, show patience. Yeah, this one's super important. You never want to rush an individual. Now, we do have to understand that some of the folks that we transport may have a cognitive disability or physical limitation. It may take them some time to process what is being requested. They just need time to kind of put those thoughts into action. So definitely want to give them some time. If you're speaking with a person who uses a communication device and you ask them a question, for example, you ask them, what are you doing this weekend? Again, they have to process that question. What am I planning on doing this weekend? Then they have to formulate an answer and then navigate through that system to, type in what they want to say. Okay, so if you're speaking with someone who uses that communication device, just you want to wait for them to finish that whole process and then push the talk button, so then you'll be able to have that communication. Also, when we are communicating with someone who stutters, a mistake that people sometimes make is finishing the individual's sentence. So if you're speaking with someone who does stutter, don't finish their sentence, because when we do that, it just gives them that idea that we don't have time to wait for them to finish. And in a lot of cases, it does make them kind of shut down out of frustration. We never want a person to feel rushed. It may trigger escalation and definitely interrupts communication as well. Okay. Next up. Oh, yes, set expectations. A good way to do that is to explain some of the rules on the vehicle. So I've got some examples here of some rules that you can use, or even just to announce before leaving the pickup spot. So the first one on the list is no jumping or rocking in the vehicle. Feet must remain on the floor. Keep hands to yourself. Keep arms and hands inside the windows. Keep seatbelts fastened until you arrive at the destination. Stay seated until the driver announces that it's safe to unbuckle. Belongings need to stay out of the aisle. Keeping a calm voice during transport. Depending on your agency that you work for, there may be a rule too of no eating or drinking other than water on the vehicle. If you do have a rider staff, they should be seated in the center of the van and will be responsible for monitoring and interacting with the passengers. A good rule of thumb too is you can just have the rules like posted somewhere on that vehicle. That's what we do over here at Gompers, versus saying the rules, every single time. Next slide, please. All right. Next, with building relationships, praise the individual. You definitely want to praise the individuals for appropriate things that they do. There are many different ways that you can show a person appreciation. It could be a high five, a knuckle bump, a thumbs up, way to go, I'm proud of you, excellent, or even just a thank you are great ways to acknowledge a job well done. It's important to be specific about what you're praising. Thank you for wearing your seatbelt. I appreciate that. Or I noticed that you took the trash out of the van yesterday. Thank you so much. That's a big help. You know, if they like the praise, 9 chances out of 10, they're going to want it again and display that same appropriate behavior. I learned this one the hard way. When I first started out in the field, like I said, I've been supporting individuals who have developmental disabilities now for 24 years. But I learned the hard way that you have to be specific. So, real quick, I was working with an individual and she was having lunch. And when she was done with her spaghetti, she knocked it to the floor. Well, anyway, I assisted her in cleaning up. Then we went over to the restroom and, she washed up. I had to wash up off of me too because I had spaghetti sauce all over me. Well, anyway, after she had done washing her hands, I said, thank you. Well, anyway, the very next day, having lunch, she has the same behavior. She knocks it off the table, and I'm like, all right, well, welcome to the field, I guess. But I was like, what do what's going on? You did this yesterday, and what's going on here? And she said to me, she goes, well, yesterday when I did this, you said thank you. I was like, oh, okay, I see what just happened here. She was absolutely right. The thing is, though, I should have been specific on what I was thanking her for. I should have said, thank you for washing your hands, but I didn't do that. I just said, thank you. And she put it as, thank you for knocking the plate off the table. So I was like, okay, live and learn. So now I am always specific on what I'm praising. Because again, if I want them to do the thing again, I want to make sure that they know what it is that they're being praised for. All right, next slide, we are going to talk about building relationships through communication. Now, it says here on the slide that communication is a way of relaying information to others that have a need to know. Communication should be clear and concise in order to get a visual picture of that message. When communicating with others, we must also take into consideration who we're speaking with and what is the best way to communicate with that person to keep them engaged. Now, not all people communicate in the same manner. So in this next section here, we're going to focus on some of the important components and aspects of communication. But first, we're going to learn kind of like the difference between verbal and nonverbal communication. Can we get the next slide, please? Okay. Verbal communication. This is using speech or spoken word to exchange information, emotions, and thoughts. Nonverbal communication is conveying and exchanging messages without the use of spoken word. So now what I'm going to do before we go to the next slide, I want to open up the chat a little bit, if that's okay. There should be a little chat button down at the bottom. And Lauren, if you don't mind reading some of the answers that we get. So I'm opening up this discussion here, okay? Can you guys just type in, give me some examples of verbal and nonverbal ways that people communicate.
Nothing yet in there, Heather.
Okay. I think we only have a few people today, correct?
Yes, there's only two.
Okay. Okay. If we're not getting any answers, then we'll just.
Nonverbal eye contact.
Okay, great. Yeah, absolutely. Eye contact or lack thereof, right? That's a form of communication.
Thumbs up.
Perfect. Okay.
And I would say like crossing your arms.
Sure. Body language. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate those answers. On the next slide, we're going to go over some that were just mentioned, and then a few others. So the first one on the list here is sign language. Okay. Now, I will say, I know for me personally, it's not in my job to be fluent in sign language. I'm sure it's not a requirement of you guys as well, but I'm not sure, it could be. But the thing is, it's really usually not in our job description, especially just, working in the transportation department. But I will say, knowing some of the basic signs can really be helpful to someone who communicates through sign language. So when it comes to some of the basic words, one that is very helpful to get to know is the word yes. So this is yes. So when the individual does this, they're signing yes. One of their favorite words, which is also good to get to know, is no. So when they do this, this is no. Another good one is bathroom. So when they do this is bathroom. Or if the person is in pain, they'll do this. So if it's up here, it might be a headache. Down here, it could be a stomach ache. Just trying to get to know some of those, basic ones. This is stop. We could go on for days. But I will say, if you guys were interested, I don't know how far you would want to get into it, but GCC has a really good program called American Sign Language 101. It's just an introductory course and it provides instruction on like deafness, deaf culture, and languages used by the deaf community. Speaking of phones, I'm going to turn this down really quick, but apps on the phone. A couple that I have on my phone that really helps out is ASL Bloom. I really like that one. And then what's another one that I have on here? Oh, ASL Pocket Sign is another good one that I have. It's just, it's a good thing, maybe just to have on your phone as something that you can utilize if you do have an individual that uses sign language to communicate. The next one on the list here is writing, emails, texting. These are forms of communication, when it comes to PECs, those are like pictures. I mean, if you even think about it, even movie posters, when we go to the movies, there's posters of the upcoming movies. That's communication, right? Clothing, how we dress, police wear uniforms, doctors wear uniforms. You may even wear a uniform to communicate or represent the company that you work for. We communicate through colors and lights. I mean, if you think about it, when we're driving in the van and the light turns red, that's communicating stop. Or maybe like flashing lights on police cars or fire alarms, the noise, that is alerting people that there is danger. We need to get out. Now, for folks that are deaf, it does have those flashing lights so that they know that there is an emergency. It was mentioned body language, and I know eye contact was one that was mentioned as well. And like I said, or lack thereof, or even an eye roll, is a form of communication. I mean, think about it. If you've ever been at a party, maybe with a significant other or friends, and you just have that I'm ready to go look. So you make eye contact with the person that you're there with, and you just give them those eyes like, I'm ready to go. Or if you can go back to grade school, remember when the teacher said, okay, pick a partner, and you look over at your friend and you kind of give them those eyes like, you and me, right? We're doing this. Yeah. So it's just eye contact. It's communicating. Hand movements, gestures. So, for example, if you want the person to lower their voice instead of, yelling, hey, be quiet, instead, you could do one of these, which is just a gesture to remind them to, lower their voice, or do one of these to lower their voice, or gestures. If you want the person to come here, you do one of these, you know what I mean? Stance, that one was mentioned as well. Arms folded, fist clenched, slouching in their seat, could be communicating a certain way that they're feeling. Facial expressions, seriously, the look that a parent gives when the child's misbehaving and that kid just knows, hey, mom or dad are serious right now. A smile on someone's face may indicate that they're happy, but don't always assume that just because someone is smiling that means they're happy. Okay, it could be a very condescending smile. Okay. Other ways we communicate: body art, tattoos. I have a friend of mine who has epilepsy, and she got a tattoo on her wrist saying that she has epilepsy, which is, good. Some people do that with not just epilepsy, but like diabetes, heart condition, allergies. People are actually getting it tattooed on their body now to communicate those things. Next slide, please. There should be more. Yes. Yeah, I thought so. So communication devices. Okay, that's just equipment that people use to communicate without using verbal speech. Silence. Silence is a form of communication, and we know sometimes silence speaks louder than words. And then, of course, speech, tone of voice, yelling, whispering. Sometimes the way we say things or our tone of voice can actually change the meaning of things. So I'm going to say the same sentence, but with two different tones, and you're going to listen to hear that it's actually going to change what I mean by this. So if I go and I tell the person, hey, do you want to get on the bus? Or do you want to get on the bus? It's the same sentence, but because of my tone, has two different meanings. Another form of communication, I don't believe, well, speech, tone of voice, I guess this can go hand in hand with a type of communication. It's called echolalia. I don't know if you guys are familiar with echolalia, but it's kind of like repetitive, sounds or speech. Echolalia. One of the individuals that Oh, yeah, I'm remembering him. One of the individuals that I used to support, he used to speak through echolalia, repeating things over and over. Now, it was so incredible. The way that he would communicate that he was hungry was he would start repeating food commercials. Okay. One of the ones that he would do is just randomly, I'm loving it. Or he'd say something like, no one out pizzas the hut. Or another one was Arby's, we have the meats. My absolute favorite one that he used to do though was Yo Quiero Taco Bell. So we started taking data on when he was using those types of repetitive speech, and we found out that he was doing it about 20 minutes before lunch every day. It wasn't necessarily that he was communicating what he wanted to eat, but that was just his way of communicating that he was hungry. Echolalia, another little boy that I used to work with, he was 6 at the time, he has autism. Well, anyway, he was attending our school, and he was going home, and he was telling his mom, it's time for circle time. It's time for circle time. And of course, mom was like, what is that, son? What is circle time? What do you want to do for circle time? Like, you know what I mean? But the kid just kept repeating it. So finally, mom called in to the teacher here and said, teacher, can you do me a favor? Can you just tell me, do you guys do some kind of circle time in the classroom? And the teacher was like, yeah, we do circle time every day at 9 o'clock. Okay, great. We're getting somewhere. So then the mom was like, what are you guys doing at circle time right now? And the teacher said that that week they were reading Bernstein Bear books. So that was this child's way of communicating to his mom that he wanted her to read a book. So when he's saying it's time for circle time, okay, kids, line up, it's time for circle time, and he's repeating that, that's what he meant. I think this type of communication is just, for me, it's so cool. It can be a little frustrating just trying to figure out what the individual is communicating, but it's like once we get it, it's so amazing. It's pretty cool. We talked about sounds, fire alarms, indicating evacuation, driving the van, a honk on the horn, things like that. I mean, sounds. Let's say you're driving the van and one of the individuals starts tapping on the window. Maybe that's just their way of just trying to get your attention because they need help with the seatbelt. Other forms of communication, laughing, crying, music. Heck yeah, people communicate through their music. That's how I found out that Whitney Houston would always love me. Now, Dolly Parton, she sang it to me first, but I don't know. I really felt it when Miss Houston belted it out to me. Okay. Um, as you can see here, there are so many different ways that people communicate outside of just verbal speech. All right. So we just talked about how to build a positive relationship. And we also talked about how people communicate. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get into some of those barriers to communication. So these are the types of things that may damage a relationship. All right, so these are just some examples of some phrases that we really shouldn't use. The first one on the list here is ordering or using commands like you have to. First off, disability or not, no one likes to be told what to do. You have to sit there because I said so. Or you have to calm down. When you tell someone to calm down, honestly, they may perceive that as an order. Basically telling them how they should be feeling in this situation. Our emotions, they belong to us. Telling someone how they should feel or react is not the same as validating them. We're going to talk more on that later, though. But seriously, never in the history of being told to calm down has the person actually calmed down. It usually makes the person more upset, when we're telling them how to feel. But we'll get more into that a little bit later, like I said. The next one on the list is warning or using threats. You better not. You better not touch that window, or I'm not taking you home. Excuse me? That's a threat. The bottom line is with threats, if you can't follow through with what you just said, we really shouldn't say it. I mean, come on, we're trying to build a positive rapport with the person. We're trying to build trust, and we can't build that trust with the individual if we're constantly lying to them or using threats. The next one on the list is advising or giving solutions. And the example we have here is why don't you? We don't always want to give them all of the solutions to their problems. Instead, we can help to guide them through how to problem solve for themselves. You don't want to use judgmental statements such as you should do this or you shouldn't do that. That may make your passenger feel like more shamed or inadequate or honestly even angrier. The next one on the list here is evaluating or blaming, telling someone that you're wrong. Okay, telling someone that they're wrong will surely not open up communication. And in most cases, it's going to cause the person to shut down, or they may feel that they have to fight harder to prove that they're right. Okay, which leads to yelling. So we don't want to blame the person. You don't want to speak to them sarcastically or, talk to them as if they're unintelligent. Praising or agreeing, believe it or not, this can be a barrier just depending on how you're using it. So if we're just going and we're telling the person, yep, you're right. Sometimes we do this one very condescending, just to kind of make the person stop talking, which is definitely a barrier to communication. The next one on the list is questioning or probing. Why did you? Okay, that just leads to accusing without understanding the situation first. So, why did you get on the van so angry? Well, that might not even be the emotion that they're feeling at this time. It could be frustration, which is very different. Or why did you put your backpack in the middle of the aisle? You know that people have to walk there. Well, you know what? Maybe the backpack started on the seat, but it fell to the aisle. When we use statements like, why did you, before knowing the facts, like I said, it kind of sounds like we're accusing them of something. And a lot of times they just get defensive and possibly more out of control. The last one is withdrawing or forget, or withdrawing or avoiding the conversation. You know what I mean? Like putting your hand up, like, nope, nope, talk to the hand. We're done. Nope, nope. I don't have time for this. It's a huge barrier to communication. The person is not going to feel that they can talk with you and may display challenging behaviors, which we'll talk a lot about later. Behavior equals communication. So avoid saying things like, I understand, or I know how you're feeling. Statements like this may further anger the passenger because they don't feel that you generally understand their circumstance. But later on, we'll talk about what we can do instead. All right. Before we jump into what to do during a challenging behavior in the vehicle, first we need to define what behavior is. So if we can go to the next slide, please. What is behavior? So, when we think about behavior, we tend to think of things like hitting someone, kicking them, biting, pulling hair, grabbing, pinching, those types of things. Those are considered behavior. But in reality, behavior is anything that an individual does that you can see or hear and count the number of times or the length of time that the individual does that behavior. In other words, behavior is an action. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. Behavior is communication. Okay. So we have to ask ourselves, what could the individual be communicating? Wants, needs, frustrations. Ultimately, all behavior is an attempt to get something or to get away from something. Next slide, please. So the question comes up, how do we decide what behaviors are good and which are bad? Well, I'm going to tell you right now that behaviors, they're not inherently good or bad. An individual's behavior may be getting them what they want or need in the only way that they know how to get it. A behavior is generally considered good or bad based on our own impression of that behavior. Our impressions of behaviors, they're shaped by a variety of influences. These impressions, they're often displayed in our judgment of others. Next slide, please. So determining if a behavior is appropriate. First, we must ask ourselves, why are we calling the behavior inappropriate? Is it simply because it goes against our own values and therefore we have placed a judgment on that behavior? Or does it truly harm another or interfere significantly in their ability to function in the environment that they're in? Now, honestly, we don't even want to judge a behavior as good or bad. I would never tell a parent that their kid was bad today. Behavior is something that someone does to communicate or get that need met. So we're not judging as good or bad behavior. It's something that they do that's appropriate or inappropriate. So an appropriate way to get the need met or an inappropriate way. So when we think about behavior, everybody uses behavior to get wants and needs met. Behavior, it can be challenging or it can be positive. It can be rewarding, it can be disruptive, and it can even be dangerous. Okay, so I want to open the chat up again. Okay, before we go to the next slide, I want to open up the chat. I want to talk about yelling. Okay, do you guys think yelling is an appropriate behavior or inappropriate? Do we have any answers?
Um, Someone says it was inappropriate.
Okay. Always? Are there any circumstances where yelling could be appropriate?
Someone said that in a situation, if there was a danger, can it be appropriate to alert people of that danger?
Perfect. I love that. Yep. So if there's danger, there's a fire, you may yell out fire so everyone knows to evacuate. I'll go ahead and continue on with some more appropriate times that yelling is totally fine. Kids on a playground, fine, yell. I don't know, maybe if you're watching a horror movie, you might get scared and yell out. In pain, all right. I truly believe that the only reason that we have a pinky toe is to catch it on the corners of desks and things. You know, we yell out. If you're on a roller coaster, fine, yell, totally fine. If you're at a sports arena and your team just made a touchdown, okay, you're gonna yell out. You're celebrating. If you're at a concert or if you've ever played bingo, you get a bingo, you're gonna yell out. So those are completely appropriate times that yelling is. It's appropriate. It's fine. So when we're talking about inappropriate times to yell, I'm going to open up the chat again. Give me some inappropriate times to yell.
Nothing yet, Heather.
Okay. Let's see. How about in a library? Not appropriate to yell.
When someone is in a crisis, when you're impatient with a situation.
Okay. So let's just say on the vehicle, when you're driving the passengers, yelling at other, people on the road is not appropriate. Okay. Um, my family knows, especially my kids, they know when I'm asleep, no yelling in the house. So when my son's playing video games, he knows when I'm napping, no yelling. It's not appropriate time to yell. Okay. Classroom setting, as I've had people in my classes say, like, even in church, it wouldn't be appropriate to yell. But then I'm like, well, depending on what they're doing in church, maybe like prayer time, not the best time to yell. So everybody exhibits behavior. Okay. And this cycle that we're about to discuss, it applies to everyone. So that's what I mean. We're not judging behavior as good or bad. It's something that someone does to communicate wants and needs, and they're either doing it in an appropriate way or an inappropriate way. Okay. All right. When we're talking about providing support, that does mean that we have a responsibility to figure out what someone is communicating. If someone is communicating in a way that puts themselves or others in danger, we do have the opportunity to teach new ways to communicate. While before a challenging behavior, it's not a great time for teaching. During a challenging behavior, not the time for teaching. And then when we talk about after the behavior, that's another time for teaching, but we'll get into that in a little bit. We're going to get into that model here pretty soon. Next slide, please. Okay. Yeah. So now that we know what behavior is, we're going to talk about conflict. Okay. De-escalation. Conflict, it's defined here as a disagreement in which the people involved see a threat to their needs, interests, or concerns. A key element of conflict is the idea that each person more than likely has a different perception of the situation than another person has. The key is to work out differences with your passengers before a situation escalates to a more difficult or dangerous encounter. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into what is de-escalation. Now that we know what we mean by conflict, let's talk about de-escalation. Defined here as de-escalation is when we effectively communicate to calm a passenger who is angry, out of control, or disturbed. De-escalation strategies can reduce the possibility of violence once a conflict begins to intensify or escalate. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about something that we like to call that behavioral model, okay? This is basically the who, what, when, where, how often this is happening, and it's going to help us to determine how to recognize inappropriate behavior before it starts and what we can do to help de-escalate the situation. So on the next slide, here too. Behavioral model. Okay. Earlier, we did say that every behavior serves a purpose. So we're going to talk about some possible causes of behavior, or this is also known as the function of behavior. Behavior occurs for a reason. Everything that we do is driven by a need. All behavior satisfies a need. However, not all needs are satisfied in an appropriate manner. In order to teach individuals how to get needs met in an appropriate manner, we first must determine the function or the purpose of that behavior. All right, so we're going to talk now about the sequence of behavior. If we could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, there's that model, okay? Now, this diagram shows the behavioral cycle as it takes place for all individuals. Our goal is to recognize and teach the individuals to stop the behavior that we're considering inappropriate from occurring. Now, this can be accomplished by developing relationships with the person that consist of trust and fondness. Developing a relationship, it's going to allow you to recognize the individual's antecedents, precursors, and the payoffs of behavior. When we begin to understand the function of behavior, we can give the individuals alternative behaviors that will allow them to receive the result when they're pursuing it in a more appropriate way. Okay, so the APBCCs, that's what we're doing right now. This is the behavioral model, and it starts here at the top left with the antecedent, and then it goes from left to right in that circle. Now, antecedents, they are part of the before stage in this model. When I say before, I mean it happens before the behavior, okay? Antecedents are what happen to or all around or even within the individual. They cause a behavior to occur, okay? It basically sets the behavior in motion. Now, everyone has antecedents to behavior. We don't do things for nothing. There is always a reason why we do what we do. It may not always be obvious as to what they are trying to communicate, but guarantee there is a trigger, okay? Now the cause, the antecedent, it can be internal or external. So we're going to start off talking about some examples of internal causes of behavior. These are things that happen within us, like inside the body, that can trigger a behavior or even cause a person to react. The very first one that we have on the list up there is hunger, okay? Also known as hangry, and that's a thing, okay? I don't know if you've ever met someone who gets irritable when they're hungry. If you haven't, hi, I'm Heather. That's me, okay? Or if you guys remember back in the day, those Snickers commercials that basically just said, you're not you when you're hungry. That's exactly what it's saying. And actually, Lauren, I forgot to ask you, but do you have that clip available for the Snickers commercial? I actually usually show it and I completely forgot.
I
If you
do not.
That's okay. That's okay. If you guys could go back and remember, the clip I usually show here, and I apologize, I forgot to make sure we had it ready, but it was the one with Betty White. She's out there playing, I think, football, and it's actually a young kid, but turns into Betty White, when he's hungry. And anyway, if you remember the commercial, it was pretty good. But it proves a good point. People do not act the same when they are hungry. Okay. Another example of an internal cause of behavior is fatigue. Just like when we're hungry, we may act different when we're tired. Sleep deprivation, it leaves our brains just feeling exhausted, so we're not able to perform our duties as well as we normally would. Plus, lack of sleep, it can result in, mood and behavior problems. And for people who are already struggling with behavior or health problems, inadequate sleep can actually make their situation or their symptoms worse. Another internal cause of behavior, medication side effects. Maybe mom gives the person a Benadryl for their allergies before they get on your van, and that person falls asleep. Well, sleep is a behavior. Okay. You can see it, you can hear it, you can measure how long they slept. It has a starting point and a stopping point. Sleep is behavior. So, why did this person have this behavior of going to sleep? Well, the Benadryl told them to. It caused drowsiness, right? Could be a past memory that upsets the person. It could be past trauma that could trigger behavior. Emotions, anger, sadness, frustration, even happy can trigger a behavior. Okay, even happy. So when we're talking about these behaviors, it's not just, like I said, the hitting, the kicking, the pitching, not all that. But let me put myself out there. I can be vulnerable. Okay. When I go out to eat and the server puts my food right in front of me and I like what I see, I am that person. I have a behavior. And my behavior is I clap. Okay. The behavior is me clapping, right? Why am I clapping? Because I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm going to feast. So it's internal, right? Um, it's very important if they're showing signs of like frustration. They're trying to put on their seatbelt, for example, right? You want to give them praise for their attempts. You want to reassure the individual. Ask them if they just want to take a break for a second, or maybe ask them if they want some help. Frustration generally occurs when an individual perceives that they're unsuccessful with something. So we want to try to recognize frustration and try to help them with a solution before it escalates into what we call an inappropriate or unsafe behavior. Other internal causes, antecedents, mental health. Okay, we have those passengers that are experiencing mental health issues or even cognitive decline. These issues, they can influence how people react to others. It could be depression or anxiety. They can trigger behavior. Other internals, biomedical factors such as ear infections, stomach aches, headaches, oversensitivity to certain sounds can be a significant reason why these behaviors are occurring. Biomedical. I know when I have a toothache, my whole world is torn upside down. I can't sleep, I can't eat, and then I'm hangry because I can't eat, and it's just because of a medical thing. Other reasons why behaviors occur, internal, lack of communication. Many times, if an individual does not have the skills or knowledge of how to communicate their needs in a socially acceptable manner, well, that's when their communication pattern may rely on negative patterns to get the need met. And then that's what we call inappropriate behaviors. Even a stressed passenger, people who are under a great deal of stress. It could be due to their job, their health, or some kind of situation at home. There are many reasons. However, as a driver, There may not be a way for you to know who's under stress, but stress can definitely lead people to overreact and suddenly become aggressive at the slightest things. The last one on the internal side there is boredom. Yeah. If an individual has no stimulation or activities, they're going to create their own out of boredom. If you think of the passenger and you notice that they're starting to get bored, just offer an activity. Yeah, you're driving, but even a little I spy, or engage them in conversation, or ask them if they want to listen to some music of their choice. I know for me personally, I make the worst decisions when I'm bored. Okay. Amazon loves me when I am bored at home. Okay. Um, I don't know, we can think all day, but like just little things that you could do. Play a game with them. If you know the individual loves animals, play a game on how many people you guys see walking dogs on your route. You know what I mean? Just try to get creative with it, because when people are bored, including us, we don't make great decisions when we're bored. All right. When it comes to another reason I kind of want to talk about, but it's not on the list though, is attention, to gain attention. Um, when we think about social contact, okay, it's a need of everyone. If an individual is not getting attention from others for being appropriate, then they may display inappropriate behaviors. After all, some believe that negative attention is better than no attention at all. Experience has taught this individual that he or she is most worthy of a staff or driver or parent's time and energy when using poor behaviors. The reason that I say that is because even in traditional parenting methods, you often see the emphasis placed on negative behavior. I'm going to share a quote with you by Dr. Howard Glasser. He says, some children simply form the impression based off of their experiences and observations that they get more out of people, bigger reactions, more animation and emotion and excitement when things are going wrong. Our responses to positive things are low key in terms of the energy that we radiate. The child feels relatively invisible for the good things that they do and starts to feel more successful when they involve us in relation to their negativity. So if you're even a parent or caregiver yourself, think about the times when you gave the person the most attention. Was it when they were acting out or when they had done something well or that pleased you? Focusing on the negative behavior, it often has that effect of reinforcing that behavior. Reinforcing a behavior means that you are increasing the likelihood that that behavior will present itself again. Yes, we must still address the inappropriate behavior when they occur, but we should be teaching and praising the behaviors that we want to see happen more than we're focusing on the inappropriate behavior. Okay, thinking about attention. Think about how you feel when your supervisor gives you lots of positive feedback about your job performance. What generally happens? We want to keep getting it, right? It's nice to hear when we're doing something right, opposed to always hearing what you've messed up on. Or I don't know if you guys have kids or not, but maybe you've had this discussion about shoes in the morning. Okay, kid can't find their shoes. So we ask them, we're running late in the morning. Where are your shoes? Kid says, I don't know. Where did you take them off? I don't remember. Now we're starting to get aggravated. We raise our voices and we say, well, if you just come home and put your shoes away where they belong, we wouldn't be late every day looking for your shoes. It seems like we're always on them when they're doing the undesirable behavior. We're giving attention to it. Now, let's say that that person comes home and actually puts their shoes away where they belong. We don't say anything, but we have to. We have to acknowledge when they do something desired in hopes that if they like the praise, they're going to continue to do it. So just, hey, kiddo, I noticed that when you came home, you put your shoes away. Great job remembering. Now, tomorrow, you're going to know exactly where they are. And you know what? We're probably going to have a little bit more time. Maybe I can make you an egg sandwich, because we're not going to be looking for your shoes. We want to reinforce the behaviors that we want to see repeated. Okay. And of course, you can do this with your passengers as well. I just use the shoe example because it's pretty relatable. Because a lot of parents at home, they've had that conversation. Where are your shoes? Because we're always running late, so we can't find them. But it could even be, I don't know, a backpack tucked underneath the seat, opposed to in the middle of the walkway. You can kind of use it on the van as well. All right. So we just talked a lot about internal causes of behavior. Next, what we're going to talk about are some of those external causes. These are something outside the body that triggers behavior. First one on the list is noise level. There could be too many people. It could be the lights. It could be that the driver was late. It could be a smell. Okay? Even a smell can trigger behavior. Okay? Think about a time when you yourself maybe walked past someone who was maybe wearing a cologne or a perfume of someone that you once knew. It may have triggered a memory, maybe a good memory. And I wonder how they're doing, or maybe a not so great memory. Okay. One of the individuals that I used to support, every day he was targeting female staff. We started taking some baseline data to see if there were any patterns to this behavior. And within like 4 months of data, we finally figured it out. Okay. It was the perfume that she was wearing. She was wearing Tommy Girl perfume. And the way that we figured this out was we had a meeting. It's called a PCSP meeting, person centered meeting for the individual. Well, anyway, sitting in that meeting, mom walked in and I got a whiff. I got a whiff of her perfume. She wore Tommy Girl perfume when she was there with us. So taking that data and putting things together, like I said, it took about 4 months, but we finally figured it out. Okay. When the staff was wearing Tommy Girl perfume, he was going after her. When she wasn't wearing the perfume, he wasn't going after her. So putting it together, mom was not the nicest of people. So when he smelled that perfume on the staff, he had, that emotion just went through him. And, I'm not going to get too much into detail, but it was just a smell. I mean, definitely smells can trigger PTSD for sure. Let's see. The next one on the list is routine. Oh yeah, for sure. It could be routine change, like a different driver. Change is different for many people, especially if you're picking up someone who is very routine oriented. For example, someone who has autism, they may have difficulty with change in routine, and that may trigger a behavior. Just communicate, if you're a new driver, communicate who you are and why you're there. As a driver of someone who transports maybe a different person every single day, there's no way that you're going to know what the person's antecedents may be. Okay, but even if you do have the same set of passengers every day, it may be hard to recognize why someone is upset. Just understand that there's always going to be a reason. It could be the weather outside, the temperature in the van. I mean, honestly, the list can go on and on as far as triggers of behavior. Okay. So we did spend quite a bit of time there talking about antecedents, causes of behavior. So next what we're going to do is we're going to move over to the precursor. It's still on this slide here, just going from left to right. So the precursor, it's kind of like a signaling behavior. These can be signs of conflict escalation. Okay. Precursors are defined as a cue, a warning that tells us that the big behavior, the inappropriate behavior, the unsafe behavior is about to happen. They're kind of like little mini behaviors that they do. Like I said, I call them like a signaling behavior. It's a warning. Precursors are also part of the before stage and actually is the last opportunity that we have to try to redirect that person. Okay. Questions that we can ask ourselves are, what did they do or say right before the behavior? Were there little mini behaviors like rocking back and forth, pacing, cursing? Maybe their, body language just changed. Their head is low, facial expressions change, they're shaking, like any type of warning. Okay. You definitely want to be aware of these signs when you're interacting with your passengers. Does their tone of voice suddenly change? Does it increase or decrease in volume? Are they clenching their fists, tightening their jaw? Do they refuse to make eye contact with you when they used to before, but now they're just not? Breathing, is it becoming heavy? You know what I mean? These can all be warnings that the inappropriate behavior is about to occur. All right, so we went over some possible causes of behavior and the warnings that happen before the behavior. Now what we're going to do is we're going to continue on this cycle and we're going to start the discussion on behavior, okay? Now, a behavior is observable and measurable. You can see it, hear it. It also means that you can count, like, or measure it in some way, like how long did this go on? A behavior has a starting point and an ending point. So some examples of behaviors are hitting, kicking, pulling hair, running, sitting, using the telephone. Grammatically, behaviors are almost always action verbs. One thing that we have to remember is that, again, I know I'm repeating myself, but all behavior is communication. It serves a purpose. We don't do things for nothing. Everyone displays behavior. So we want to look at, what are they attempting to get or do? What are they trying to tell us through their behavior? Let's say right here, right now. Okay, hold on, let me grab something. Let's say, okay, I got it right here. Okay, let's say I throw my pen. Okay, I just threw my pen. All right, that was a behavior. Okay, if you were looking, you saw me throw it. If you were here with me, you would have heard it hit the floor. You can measure how far I threw it. Now, I'm going to open up the chat again. Okay, in this workshop right now, why did I just throw that pen? Does anybody know? In this training right now, why did I just throw my pen? What was I communicating? What was the purpose of me throwing that pen?
To show that behaviors are actions.
Perfect. Absolutely. That's exactly why I threw it. There is no other reason why I threw it. Now, had I been, I think I have another one right here. Had I been writing with my pen, and then I throw it, I threw it because the ink is out and I'm frustrated. Okay. But in this training right now, the only reason that I threw it the first time was to prove a point. That was it. All behavior serves a purpose. Like even us in this workshop today, we're all behaving, talking, interacting, sitting, smiling, breathing. We're all behaving in this workshop today. And there's a reason why you guys are here, right? There's a reason that I'm here doing this training for you guys. Okay. Now, going back to that previous conversation that we had earlier, is the behavior appropriate or inappropriate, right? So even the behavior of kicking, well, context is going to play a role in this. If they are kicking a soccer ball, no, it's totally appropriate. If they are kicking someone else, not appropriate. You know what I mean? When it comes to these behaviors, like I just said, like context is going to play a huge role. You got to have more information about it, All right. So we went over the antecedent. We went over the precursor. We discussed the behavior. Now we're going down toward the bottom of the model, which is the calm down period. Okay. This can be classified as part of the after stage. This is the period for the individual to come back into control. It's also known as the de-escalation period. We can teach things to help them understand their emotions, like anger. Anger is fine. Anger is totally okay. It is a healthy emotion. Everyone gets angry, but it's what they do as a result of that anger that is sometimes not okay. Hurting themselves, hurting others, damaging property, things like that out of anger is inappropriate behavior. The calm down period is a good time to teach some relaxation strategies. Taking a deep breath, count to 10, listen to music, take a walk, color, whatever it is that can help that person calm before the storm. Okay. Once the individual is calm, this is the time to process what is going on, how they're feeling. Okay. What happened? Why did that behavior happen? How could have it been prevented? How will the individual react the next time that this occurs? This is a good time to teach other ways to handle the situation if it happens again. The focus should be on teaching an alternative behavior, replacing the inappropriate behavior with a more appropriate way to get the need met. The final section of this model here is the consequence. The consequence is the result. It's the payoff. What do they get out of displaying that behavior? Consequences should be natural or logical, okay? Consequences can be positive or negative or both. We learn from both. So let's talk about the difference between natural and logical consequences, okay? If you think about it like this, a natural consequence, that is something that is going to happen after that behavior or after they make that choice, okay? It will naturally happen. It will happen every single time. So, for example, if the person touches the hot burner, naturally you're going to get burned. Or if a person stays up late and sleeps in, naturally they're late for the bus. Or if a child leaves their bicycle out overnight while it's raining, naturally it will get wet. So natural consequences happen every time and will always happen. Logical consequences, they don't necessarily always happen. Okay, they don't occur naturally. So it's something that a caregiver, driver, parent kind of plans out to teach them not to do it again. Okay, for example, a child that maybe was asked not to ride their bike in the street starts riding in the street. What's the consequence? The bike is put away for the rest of the night to teach the child what happens if they don't listen. Going back to leaving the bike out. If the person leaves their bicycle out overnight, logically, what could happen? Well, it could get stolen, which will teach them you got to lock it up, you know? All right. So you notice again on this diagram, all right, that it goes left to right. Antecedent, precursor, behavior, calm down, and consequence. It doesn't always have to flow that way. So we're going to go over a couple of scenarios together, and we're going to see what we can do to kind of manipulate that diagram a little bit, okay? Can we go a couple slides, please? I'm going to find out where we are with the slides.
I'm working on it. They don't seem to want to go.
I gotcha, okay. It should be, we're going to the slide that it's a scenario about Mary. Little too far. Wait, I think. We're looking for Mary. There she is. Okay, right? Yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm gonna share this scenario with you, okay? As you're listening, listen for what happens before, during, and after, okay? So again, antecedents and precursors are the before stage. Remember the cause and the warning, it's about to happen. The during is the actual behavior, and then the calm down and consequence is what happens after. So here's our scenario here. I'm going to read it real quick. Mary is a very quiet individual on your van who pretty much keeps to herself. She is sitting quietly playing her portable video game. All of a sudden, Johnny, who is sitting right behind her, unbuckles his seatbelt, stands up, and reaches over the seat and takes her game. She gets tears in her eyes. She starts to rock back and forth while mumbling to herself. Oh, Johnny, I can't stand him. Why do you always have to be so mean to me? She then unbuckles her seatbelt, reaches behind the seat, hits Johnny, and takes the game back, and then goes back to playing the game. Okay? So we're going to break this down. Okay? So we were talking about Mary's antecedent. Okay? I'm going to open up the chat again. Can somebody give me what is Mary's antecedent? What's the cause?
Nothing yet, Heather.
Okay.
Her game was taken.
Perfect. I love it. Absolutely. That was the cause of the behavior. Johnny took her game. Perfect. So now, how could we tell that she was getting upset? What were her precursors?
She started crying.
Okay, good. Yeah, crying, rocking, mumbling. Those were the warnings. What was Mary's behavior? What was the action that she did? So the action was that she hit him. That was the behavior. That was the during. And then the calm down, the de-escalation period, she went back to playing her game. And then we have a consequence. What happened as a result of Mary hitting Johnny? What did she get? Well, she got her game back. She got some satisfaction. So this behavior that Mary just had, it worked for her. So the chance of her doing it again is very high because she got what she wanted. Now, it may not work out so well next time. I mean, come on, Johnny could have gotten up, hit her back. Now we have a fight breaking out in the van. So you know what we need to do? We need to try to prevent the behavior from even happening. And that's what we're going to do right now. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so we have this broken down. Starting with the before stage, okay? Let's say you as the driver, you look in the rear view mirror and you see Johnny standing up on the van, okay? Or if you're the ride along and you see Johnny unbuckling his seatbelt. As the staff, what could we do when we see Johnny either stand up or unbuckle his seatbelt? What do you think we could do in this moment? Did I lose you guys? Are you still there?
Yep, we're here. My laptop decided to stop sharing the slides, so I'm getting them back up.
Gotcha. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and continue on. So things that we could do when we see Johnny stand up or unbuckle his seatbelt, we could, what could we do? We could ask him, like redirect him, get him refocused. Maybe just ask him to, I don't know, now I'm trying to think here. Maybe there's something on him that he can show you, or like if he's wearing like a baseball cap or something, maybe you could just distract him in conversation and say, oh, I was looking at your hat earlier. Did you see if the Suns won the game last night or something like that? Just try to distract him. You could just maybe ask him to sit down. Think quick as the driver, hey, everybody, I see a bump in the road coming up. For everyone's safety, if I could just make sure everyone's sitting down, that might just distract him from what he's about to do. Okay. Or if you just ask him, can I help you with something, Johnny? That may deter him in what he's about to do. Okay. Now, um, thinking about redirection, okay, um, even just distracting him with any type of conversation, all right? If you know anything about Johnny, maybe it could be video games or something like that, okay? Now, let's say we see he got the game. He already grabbed the game from her, right? Um, she's rocking back and forth. Maybe we can try to distract her in that moment. You know what I mean? Like we can try to talk to her and say, oh, I'm gonna pull over real quick just so we can kind of see what's going on, because maybe you did see him take the game. You want to pull the van over and then maybe try to get her to, calm a little bit and then ask him to give the game back. Just try to de-escalate the situation in that moment if you saw it. Okay. Even just reminding everyone the expectations on the vehicle. Okay. Now, again, if you saw him get the game, you want to intervene in that moment. Okay. And really, what we want to do is we want to talk to Mary. Hey, Mary, what's going on? What just happened? And she says, Johnny just took my game. Okay, well, what do we need to do? Maybe ask for it back, or like I said, you could pull over and talk to both. Okay. Now, definitely want to acknowledge the fact that you saw it happen. Okay. We'll talk to Johnny, but we need to make sure that we get Mary calmed down in this moment. Bottom line is Mary's the one that's upset right now. We'll deal with Johnny in a moment, but we need to calm her down. Okay. Johnny's fine. He has the game. But let's say you didn't see the antecedent, you didn't see him grab the game, driver was busy, looking at the road, things like that. Again, you may just notice those precursors, her rocking back and forth, So in that case, again, try talking to her, pull the van over if you need to, just to try to see what's going on. Okay. But you didn't see the precursor either. You just saw him grab the game. All right. So what we're going to do, thinking about that behavioral model, the arrows, like I said, they go from left to right in that circle, the antecedent, precursor, behavior, calm down, and consequence. But it doesn't always have to. So if we can recognize in the antecedent or precursor stage, you do have a good chance of preventing the behavior from happening. Okay, go from antecedent, him taking the game, go straight to the consequence, which is, get her back to playing. So if we can get that game back in that stage, it's not going to lead to the during where Mary got up and hit him, because now it looks like she's the bad guy, right? Teaching coping mechanisms, right? Counting to 10, listening to music, just again recognizing that Mary is getting upset. Okay. The goal is to get Mary's game back without her hitting anyone. So again, if you talk to her in the antecedent or precursor stage and you talk with Johnny, you do have a good chance of preventing that behavior. Either way, the consequence remains the same. Either she hits him to get the game, or you intervene in the beginning when you notice that she's rocking, or you notice that he's standing up, to go grab it. Okay, either way, the consequence is going to be the same. Okay, we just don't want her hitting him to get it back. Okay, all right. Let's go ahead. I think just because of time today, let's go a couple slides here. And we're gonna start on the conversation. Yeah, we'll skip this one for right now. Avoiding conflict. Yes, this is exactly where I want to be. Okay, so avoiding conflict on the vehicle. All right. To help us understand why a conflict may begin on transit vehicles, we need to look at some of the most things that most passengers are expecting from the transit service. Because if a passenger is unsatisfied, that could lead them to becoming angry and maybe taking it out on you, the driver. So we're going to talk about more examples of conflict triggers of behavior. The first one on the list here is reliability. Passengers want to know that they can rely on your transit system to get them where they're going on time. Cleanliness and comfort. Passengers also expect their mode of transportation and the transit facilities that they use to be clean and comfortable. Friendliness and empathy. Your passengers expect to feel that the transit system cares about their needs, is willing to listen and answer their questions, and doesn't ignore their concerns. So let's discuss some of the important de-escalation strategies that when we're dealing with conflict. It could be passenger against driver. It could be passenger against passenger. So the first de-escalation strategy is communication. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so communication. It's the most important one, I think. Communication, it is so important when we're interacting with the passengers. How you communicate and the ways that you communicate can help de-escalate conflict. The three basic aspects of communication are body language, tone of voice, and word choice. Remember to find out the best communication method for your passenger. Next is situational awareness. That's just knowing what's going on around you and staying vigilant to any changes or threats. I think using situational awareness, it's going to help you to recognize and read the indicators of difficult passengers, as well as just being mindful of your own stress responses. When you recognize your own stress response, you can better maintain your self-control and composure and not allow yourself to be provoked. Next slide, please. Calming approach is always good. When passengers are challenged, they often raise their level of their voice out of instinct. You may be tempted to try to meet them where they are by raising your voice, but you will find that keeping a neutral tone of voice consistently and throughout a heated or hostile encounter, it may effectively help you to diffuse that situation. The next one on the list here is informing behavior. This involves making statements that let the irate passenger know what is going on without using words like you must or you should. So here are some examples I want to give you of informing behavior that don't include those words like must or should. So let's say you have a passenger that will not put their seatbelt on. Let them know that it's not like just company policy. It's not just my personal rule on the vehicle. You can inform them that I cannot move this vehicle until everyone is buckled up. Also, you don't want to order or command the passenger to do something. Sometimes just providing information can help to de-escalate that situation. Another thing you can do to avoid using the words is if you say something like you need to, like you need to sit down or you need to put your seatbelt on. Instead, we may say something like, hey, everyone, I can't see out of my mirrors. Can everyone please have a seat? So now it makes it more about you and not directly about that one person in the vehicle, okay? Plus, it may also help them to avoid embarrassment as well. Let's see, the next slide, please. Ask for more information. Ask the person something along the lines of, what else? What else is frustrating you about this situation? Doing so helps to ensure that the other person can get every bit of tension off their mind. If they have additional information that they want to add, we want to be sure to use like a mirroring technique. Okay, we're going to talk about what that is in just a minute. The next one on the list here is to validate the person. We kind of briefly talked about this in the beginning of the workshop, but validation is the recognition and acceptance of another person's thoughts, feelings, sensations, and behaviors as like understandable. Have you ever had someone say, don't be mad, or there is no reason to be upset? Get over it. You're stressing over nothing. Just calm down. Like I mentioned in the beginning, our feelings belong to us. Being told to feel or not to feel a certain way is very different than someone validating how we feel. You got to keep in mind that feelings and opinions are neither right or wrong. They're just information. To validate someone's feelings does not mean that you have to agree or you have to take the blame. We don't have to agree. We just have to accept that this person is feeling a certain way. So again, telling someone to calm down, it's not validating, okay? So instead of telling the person to calm down, get over it, you're stressing over the little things, or my very favorite is you let the little things bother you. Instead, validate the feeling is real. So you could say something like, yeah, it makes sense that you would feel this way. Or looking at it from your perspective, I would probably feel the same way. That must be frustrating. Is there anything I can do to help? You know, that sounds like it'd be frustrating. I'm so sorry you're going through that. Validate that the emotion that they are feeling is real, even if you don't agree. But validate the feeling is real. Listen to understand what a passenger is communicating. Let them vent. Don't interrupt them. Now, on the other extreme, if the person is going on and on and on, and it sounds like they're just repeating themselves, you can let them know that, you've already said that. Let them know that you do have to continue on with the route to get everyone home on time. But at the same time, validating that the emotion that they're feeling in this moment, it's valid. Yeah. We can go to the next slide, please. The next thing we can do, just listen. This is typically the most challenging step of all, especially during a heated debate. Yet it is critical to let the other person share all of their thoughts about the issue at hand. Reflective or active listening shows the passenger that you heard them. This tactic here is to acknowledge an angry passenger's feelings and appear empathetic to what they're feeling. Often, people just want to be acknowledged and feel that they were heard. Mirror what you hear, whereas interrupting and raising your voice will increase the anger of the other person. The acting of mirroring diffuses it. Mirroring is repeating what you just heard so that the other person feels heard. So what I'm hearing is that you're upset because, oh, okay. So I'm hearing that you're upset because she's sitting in your seat. Okay. This way they know that you understand why they're feeling the way that they are. Next slide, please. Empathize. A close cousin to validation is empathy. Empathy seeks to understand what another is feeling. Empathizing is an essential final step before we start to try to resolve the conflict in a more tangible direct manner. And Lauren, do you have the video for this, the empathy video?
If I remember correctly, we weren't able to use the empathy video anymore due to copyright.
Okay, I thought that was the 10 Commandments for the other one. You might be right though. Okay, okay. We'll just go ahead and we'll just continue on then with the opening behavior. This is when you ask the angry passenger questions that allow them to open up and express themselves. So if you think about it with this one, human beings sometimes will purposely draw attention to themselves, even negative attention, just to be seen, just to be heard. So asking the passenger questions can help them to feel acknowledged. And at the same time, it tends to interrupt the violent, thought patterns because we're listening to them. By asking open-ended questions, you are allowing them the chance to address their feelings and get back into control of themselves. So I'm going to give you some examples, of just some opening-ended questions. Can I help you? Do you need something? How are you doing today? What do you need? Hey, what do you think about what I'm saying? Just open-ended questions can help them to kind of process the whole situation, and then maybe it'll open them up to discuss kind of how they're feeling in this moment. Next slide, please. This one's one of my favorites. I really like this one. Ask to respond. Okay, so now it's your turn with your perspective. Be sure to use positive body language, tone of voice, and word choices during this part so that the other person will not feel inclined to defend themselves. Positive body language includes smiling, direct eye contact, frequent head nods, positive voice tone, just consisting of a calm, slow, deliberate, and kind voice. So you can even use reflective statements with an informing statement to calm a passenger who is angry because maybe, I don't know, the vehicle's late. So this includes showing empathy and validating a feeling. So say something like, you know what? I understand that you're frustrated because you might be late for work. So I am going to do my best to get you there safely and on time. So you're validating the frustration. You understand why they're frustrated. And then you're trying to help to, problem solve. I'm going to, try to get you there safely and on time. Okay. Next up, next slide, please. Reducing escalation. Says to maintain a calm demeanor, you must first be calm yourself. Take a deep breath. Think before you react, okay? Or think before you speak with the passenger. You don't want to get defensive and take threatening stances, even if the passenger is insulting you directly. Ask yourself some questions about the situation. Are they being disruptive by yelling or bullying someone? Are they refusing to comply with the rules? These are some signs that may mean that that situation is escalating. So what are we supposed to do? Do you understand that if you act out aggressively, it's only going to make the situation worse? We have to understand that. Try to handle the situation maybe from the driver's seat. This creates a less aggressive stance, and you're also not invading the person's space, because at times when we approach the person, their fight mode might kick in. So we want to kind of keep that space. Additional tactics. Can I talk? It's Friday afternoon. Maybe I can't. Tactics is to help reduce the escalating situation. Can we go to the next slide, please? Treat every passenger with respect. No one likes to be embarrassed. No one likes to be humiliated or intimidated. A common reason that people act out in violence is because they feel humiliated. Use the golden rule tactic. Do unto others as you want done unto you, right? So treat people how you want to be treated with respect and dignity. Now that's the golden rule, but we can't forget the platinum rule. We want to treat people how they want to be treated, okay? So we know that we all want to be treated with dignity and respect. But again, you have to understand that people are unique. You know, some passengers may enjoy conversation in the morning. Other folks may appreciate the silence in the morning. So that's what I mean by treat people how they want to be treated, right? That's the platinum rule. Remember to speak clearly and calmly and use repetition. If your transit vehicle is equipped with cameras, consider letting the passenger know that they are being recorded, and maybe that'll help diffuse the situation. Never be surprised, though, or caught off guard if a passenger overreacts. Remaining calm is going to help. Next slide, please. When de-escalation strategies are not working, if the situation is becoming dangerous, you may need to contact dispatch, or if you have a base. There's a few points though I want to bring up about contacting dispatch. If your vehicle is equipped with a panic button or a silent alarm, this is the time that you may need to use it to contact someone for help. If you don't have a silent alarm, your agency may want to consider establishing like a verbal emergency code that can be understood by that cannot be understood by the difficult passenger. But dispatch knows that you need help. You need a supervisor or, law enforcement if necessary. Next slide, please. If you don't have like a silent alarm or a verbal emergency code, you need to be careful about what you say in this moment when you call in to request assistance. You also want to know how to notify dispatch. You want to make sure that you know to let them know of your location if your vehicle is not equipped with GPS. These are just some things that in the heat of the moment we may forget. It is important to note your request or notification to dispatch could further escalate the situation. We have to keep that in mind. Next slide, please. If the authorities need to be called, here are just some tips for what to do and what to say when you are on the phone with 911. Call 911 away from the individual if you can. Your safety is as important as the individual and others in the vehicle. If he or she becomes agitated or feels that they're being threatened by overhearing that call, you may need to step out of the van to make that phone call. You may even ask the police to come with their lights off, just so it doesn't scare or, make the individual more upset. Speak to the 911 dispatcher in a calm, clear, and controlled manner as you can. As you can. Sorry, I'm reading that part. This will help the trained professional best administer the correct resources and level of response to help you. So when it comes to this part, give them your name, give them the location, stick to the facts on what you've seen, what you've heard. Tell the dispatcher what is happening now if you can. Give them some information about the person. I always recommend that, let them know I've got someone on my vehicle that has autism. They're nonverbal, they're deaf, they're wielding or not wielding a weapon. The more information that they have, the better that they're going to be able to assist. Next slide, please. Stay on the line. While on the phone with the dispatcher, emergency help is being dispatched. So staying on the line, if asked to do so, isn't going to delay help for responding. The Phoenix Police Department, they have several hundred CIT trained officers, that's crisis intervention. They're working as first responders. They are specifically trained police officers and civilian employees committed to assisting persons with mental illness and or other brain disorders. Now, the CIT training, it provides officers with skills that they can use to minimize the risk, and depending on the situation. For example, if you have someone on your vehicle that is deaf, if you're able to request a CIT trained officer and you let them know of the situation, they may just be able to get someone who uses sign language to be able to communicate with that person. That's one of the benefits because, like I said, they go through a very detailed training on how to approach people who have certain, disabilities or behavioral health. It is okay to ask for the CIT officer. Can we go to the next slide, please? I think I've got the information on the next slide there. Yeah. So we do have the information on the non-emergency number. If you are in a situation where you do need some assistance and maybe it's going to take a while for someone to come, maybe from your agency to help out, but it is okay to request a CIT trained officer. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. We have a couple more things that we're gonna talk about here. The last lesson is just about how to position your vehicle in case of that type of emergency. If your vehicle is stationary, don't move it and make sure the doors are open. This allows the dangerous passenger, other passengers, and yourself to get off the vehicle if necessary. If you are driving when you determine the situation has turned dangerous and you are in a populated area, you could pull the vehicle off the road in a safe location, such as a gas station, small community, or a rest area, and open the doors. This is going to allow you to stop the vehicle where there may be other people around that may be able to assist you. I want to mention that it is not safe to pull over on the freeway. I know that probably sounds like common sense, but we have had a couple of scenarios where the staff that was driving the van pulled over on the freeway and individual gets out of the van and bolts. Okay, this could be a very dangerous situation. Okay. Pull over in, like, I think I said this already, but like a residential area is always safe. It could be an empty parking lot, gas station, maybe like away from everybody, perhaps. It's just, like I said, not safe to pull over on the freeway. Now, I'm not sure if we have anyone in this workshop. I know there's only a couple of you here today, but if you've ever worked under the DDD, they do have a class called Prevention and Support that we train on. If all least restrictive alternatives have not worked, that there are physical intervention techniques that we use if the vehicle cannot be evacuated. It's called our vehicle restraint, but that's working under the DDD though. So if you have ride along, that would be the person that does that. All right. Now, some of you here, you may provide services that take you into a very rural area. Oh, can we go to the next slide, please? Oh, maybe oh no, we're here. Okay. Yeah, so if you're in like a rural area or a remote location, as you know, it may take some time for the supervisor or law enforcement to get there. In this type of situation, you're just gonna have to rely on your experience and common sense to protect yourself and the passengers if it escalates to that point. If all else fails, though, recognize that just stopping and exiting the vehicle to avoid confrontation is always a good thing. Calling the authorities or just disengaging from a safe spot, right? We don't want to get in there physically, okay? Because that's just going to escalate the behavior even more, okay? But of course, like I said, if you do fall under the DDD spectrum there, you may be trained in specific things like that. But always follow your agency's special procedures on handling conflict with passengers and responding to potentially dangerous situations if they do have that. It's just essential for the transporter of people with disabilities to be familiar with the characteristics of their passengers. You know, it's important to remember that people who have developmental disabilities or physical limitations, just remember that they're individuals first, and that descriptions of specific categories of disability do not apply to the extent of all people with that same disability. Everyone is unique, and you just, like I said, you just want to get to know the individuals that you're going to be transporting the best that you can. So this training here today, it was designed to discuss some general information on how to recognize a challenging behavior before it occurs. We covered de-escalation strategies when transporting individuals who have special needs and what you may do in an emergency. I understand that there is no one size fits all when it comes to transporting passengers who may display inappropriate or disruptive behavior, but I do hope that the information that I provided today can help you to assist in the safety of the passengers that you transport. So again, you know, just thank you for allowing me to be here today and do this workshop with you. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we went over today? I do appreciate too your participation with the chat. I know sometimes Zoom or whatever we're on right now kind of sometimes makes it a little bit more challenging, but I do appreciate you guys as well.
Thank you so much, Heather. It doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat box.
Okay. All right. Well, again, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.